Kunja Bihari Upijana Balapa Girivardhari. Hare Krishna. Oh, I didn't know I was live. We're just getting ready for the kirtan. Hare Krishna. So I'm going to start kirtan now, and then we're going to read from the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, which gives a summary study of Mahaprabhu's life, which we promised we would be doing, and we started Wednesday up to Gaur Purnima. So we'll see how far we get today, and we'll see what the next days bring us. Hare Krishna. Govinda, 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 Govinda. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vijana Vallabha Girivardhari Vijana Vallabha Girivardhari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Upi Janavallabha Girivardhari Upi Janavallabha Girivardhari Shodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Shodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Chamunatira Vana Chamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Vijana Vallabha Girivardhari Vijana Vallabha Girivardhari Shodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Shodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Sodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Kisodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamanatira Vanachari Jamanatira Vanachari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. Today is a special day, it's Friday, so we're going to do another song just for you. We did this song yesterday. If you were in class. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari. Gauranga, Nityananda, Maum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanyavari Paschatya Rasatarine. Yeah. Maybe one day we should just have kirtan for the whole class. What do you think? Friday should be kirtan day, half hour before class. Because I can't see you, so I don't know if you're falling asleep or dancing or what you're doing. Yeah, that's the problem. So, Gorpurnima is coming up in 9 days. Correct. No. Yeah, 9 days. So we thought we would get absorbed. I have to just beg your pardon. I don't have what I want to read up yet, so I just have to search on the database to find it. The introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam. Preface, introduction. Click on it, nothing happens. Okay. Preface. No, there's an introduction. It's not the preface. Although the preface is interesting. As I remember, there is a summary study of Mahaprabhu's life in the introduction, and I am looking for it now. And, oh yeah, short sketch. This is in the beginning of Bhagavatam, so I thought we could read and discuss this. A short sketch of the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. If you want to follow along, it's just after the, preface? It's after the introduction. There's a preface and introduction, and then this comes after the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam. I guess, Nadia, you could copy it if you wanted. I didn't know if we want to read along with it. Anyway, we'll begin. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great apostle of love of God and the father of the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, advented himself at Sridham, Mayapur, a quarter in the then city of Navadvip in Bengal, on the Palguna Purnima evening in the year 1407 Shakabda, corresponding to February 18th, 1486, by the Christian calendar. So on my way over here from my house to my office to give class, I was meditating on something which I think perhaps all of us have thought, or if we haven't, well, recognize how interesting a thought it is. Lord Jesus Christ, of course, some Christians say that he was God incarnate. We understand that he was avatar, Shaktivesh avatar, a jiva soul empowered to do amazing work on the behalf of God. So in a sense, he is God in the terms of Shakti, being empowered by God, but as a jiva soul. And as we know, Christianity is the world's largest religion and has spread to many places around the world, where the entire country became Christian, or most of the country became Christian, or Catholic, or some aspect of Christian. And of course, the Christians think that we are all going to hell because we haven't accepted Jesus, and because Jesus is the Son of God, God incarnate, there can't be any other way. And so I was thinking, it seems, in a sense, illogical, strange, unfortunate, weird, that God himself comes and nobody recognizes it. It's outside of some parts of India. Mahaprabhu is not recognized as Krishna, as Radha and Krishna, or misunderstood. Of course, we've been reading how easily Krishna is misunderstood, and how people have sometimes motivations in misunderstanding him. But still, we have this message that God actually came. That's quite a message. I mean, look at Christianity. God came 2,000 years ago. If you surrender unto him, you'll be saved. You won't go to hell. If you don't surrender, you'll go to hell. What is our message? Very similar in certain ways. God came 2,000 years ago. He came back not as a Shaktivesh avatar, but he came back as himself, not only himself, but himself combined as Radha and Krishna, both in one form. And he came to give something far greater than Jesus gave, and the world doesn't know it. And so we have something to tell the world, and we have something to tell the Christians. The Jews say the Messiah, they're waiting for the Messiah. He already came. There's nothing to wait for. So this is an unfortunate situation, and it's a reality. And so I was thinking, one of the duties of the Krishna consciousness movement is to establish the fact that God actually came, because nobody knows that he came, and nobody would believe it anyway, at least at this stage of the game. Most people outside of India wouldn't believe it, but I'm sure they didn't believe in Jesus also for a period of time. I don't know the history, but I think it's logical and obvious. It takes time to communicate and to get people to believe. So this is what we're up against. A great travesty, you could say, in the world, that God comes and people don't know it, or they deny it, or they run from it. And so our job is to capture them. His father, Sri Jagannath Mishra, a learned Brahmin from the district of Sylhet, came to Navadvip as a student, because at that time Navadvip was considered to be the center of education and culture. So Navadvip is kind of like the Oxford of India at that time. There were many schools, of course, schools of philosophy, not schools of bhakti. He domiciled on the banks of the Ganges after marrying Srimati Sachi Devi, a daughter of Srila Nilambar Chakravarti, the great learned scholar of Navadvip. Learned scholar also means astrologer, and he did the astrologer for Nimai when he was born. Jagannath Mishra had a number of daughters by his wife Srimati Sachi Devi, but they all expired at an early age. Sound familiar to Krishna Lila? The two surviving sons, Sri Vishwarup and Sri Vishvambara, became at last the objects of their parental affection. The 10th child and younger son, Vishvambara, later became known as Nimai Pandit. So that he's the 10th. That means they had 8 children, 8 daughters that expired. I have not. We need to get more information on that. And as far as I know, it's not explained in Prabhupada's books, but certainly it's explained elsewhere. The 10th child and youngest son, Vishvambara, later became known as Nimai Pandit, and then, after accepting the renounced order of life, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his transcendental activities for 48 years and then disappeared from the mortal world in the year 1455, Shakabda at Puri. So his brother Vishwarup was an expansion of Nityananda. Vishwarup was hearing Bhagavatam from Advaita Acharya. He became inspired when he was older to take sannyas, which was kind of like a knife in the heart of his parents. And I really read, but I will tell the story now that Sachi did not want her son to hear from Advaita Acharya. Did not want Nimai to hear because of and so she was always afraid that he would take sannyas. Of course he did. That was her great fear, and that fear came to life. Vishwarup left his body still at a younger age, and he merged into Nityananda Prabhu. So that, I think we had discussed this before, the confusion. There's Vishwarup, who's his brother, and then there's Nityananda, who's born in a different family. Of course, Balaram was born of Rohini, but Rohini was the wife of Vasudeva, I believe. So there's some family relationship. But so similar thing, Nityananda is the brother, but he's born of different parents. But it's the same kind of carbon copy. Names have been changed, but the personalities are the same. So Vishwarup, there was no, in Krishna Lila there of course was no brother born of the same mother. Balaram was transferred, but similarity. So anyway, Vishwarup is a partial expansion of Nityananda, who later, after his death, merges into the body of Nityananda. So Nityananda, of course, is Balaram, still Krishna's brother. For his first 24 years, he remained in Navadvip as a student and householder. His first wife was Srimati Lakshmi Priya, who died at an early age when the Lord was away from home. When he returned from East Bengal, he was requested by his mother to accept a second wife, and he agreed. And in that culture, you might ask, why did he remarry it? You know, Prabhupada said, if you get divorced, don't remarry. I don't think we ever asked him, if the wife dies, can you remarry? But in that culture, having more than one wife was actually considered okay, or necessary in some cases, perhaps. Of course, as the Supreme Lord, he could do whatever he wanted, but he was obviously following etiquette in the culture of the times and places. So He did accept another wife. Of course, these are his eternal consorts. So now Prabhupada begins about the Lord's taking sannyas. He doesn't go through the childhood leelas. But we can just briefly describe Mahaprabhu did not manifest himself as a preacher. Let me close this. He didn't manifest his mission early on. He manifested all kinds of interesting childhood pastimes. And he manifested these pastimes as a scholar. Okay, we're going back. We're going to stop now because we have a comment, authoritative comment from a real Greek person about orthodoxy in Christianity. Not really. According to deep knowledge of orthodoxy, who is not a Christian will have to wait. Well, he had to do in this life. In the subtle world, this can be seen like hell because of something. So hell is a new conception. Is that what you're saying? Right, to move a chair. According to what I've understood, Christianity actually describes a four-yuga circle. The apocalypse is actually the rival of Kalki. Wow, interesting. It stops there instead of Christian. Yeah, that makes sense. That Christianity has become misunderstood. Some scholars say the idea of going to hell was just to inspire people to be serious about their spiritual lives out of fear. So you see a lot of preaching is based out of fear. The sword. Take this book. Here's the Bible. Here's the sword. Which one are you going to take? That's nice to know. But Jyotirmaya, it's more depressing now that you said that, because it even shows us how far from the teachings of Jesus Christianity has gone. At least many aspects of it, or many sects of Christianity have gone. It's so unfortunate. If it had not gone so far, Krishna consciousness would have been much more appreciated as something very genuine, I think. Okay, so we're going to read on. So we're talking about his early life. So he didn't exhibit devotional sentiments in his early life. He only exhibited sentiment for knowledge, study, philosophy, logic, which was what was happening in Navadvip. Many schools were opened. So he was a great logician. And when he was young, like 11 or 12, he was so accomplished in logic that he opened his own school. And he wasn't teaching bhakti. But he was obviously very attractive and obviously very intelligent. And sometimes the devotees had interaction with him, and they'd say, you have so many good qualities. The only quality missing is you're not a devotee. Why don't you become a devotee? And he would say things like, yeah, later. I'm not ready. So as a child, he was just like Krishna. He was very mischievous. And so he did a lot of mischievous things, kind of funny, bothering Brahmins. And, I think we had talked about that story. I forget the context, where Lord Chaitanya was eating the offering of that Brahmin. So like that, and pulling at the Brahmin's feet when they're in the Ganga, chanting Gayatri and getting Ganga water in his mouth and spitting on them, and just like doing all kinds of mischief. As Krishna has that cowherd boy, mischief side. So he did a lot of mischief and didn't really show overtly any signs of devotion. that he was going to be a devotee. Of course, when he appeared, there was an obvious sign because it was a lunar eclipse, and the custom was that during the lunar eclipse, people would go in the Ganga and chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And so when he appeared, everyone was chanting. So, was that a coincidence? No, that was divine arrangement. Atheists might think that's just a coincidence. Whatever. They want to think, they will think. Not a coincidence. And then you may know the story, which was also not a coincidence, that as a baby he would cry, and the only thing that would pacify him is when they chanted, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he'd stop crying. Then they'd think, okay, good, he's not crying. And then they'd stop chanting, and then he'd start crying. So, Mahaprabhu came to deliver, the external reason was he came to deliver the holy name as the process for this age. And so, we saw right from birth he was already doing it. Everybody was chanting, and if he was getting all the ladies to chant to get him to stop crying. But then when he became as he grew, he didn't exhibit devotional qualities. So it was kind of like, I've come to get everyone to chant, and here's the sign that I've come. But for now, I'm going to do mischief and study logic and like that. So obviously, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so he's a good logician. And so he could debate, take a point of view, like, this is why women should become Diksha Gurus. And he'd give all the arguments and defeat everybody. And everyone's like, I can't say anything. Then he'd say, actually, this is the reason why they shouldn't become Diksha Gurus. Of course, he didn't argue about this, but just an example. And he would defeat all his previous arguments. And everyone would be amazed. Actually, he just defeated his own argument. And then he would again establish why women should be gurus, or maybe it started the other way, why they shouldn't be. I don't want to offend anybody's sentiments, but I just started with why they should be. I guess that reveals how I feel about it. So anyway, so then he again establishes why they should be gurus, defeating all his previous arguments of why they shouldn't be gurus, which were arguments which defeated his original arguments. And so that's called a good debater, who can even defeat his own arguments. And one thing that he was showing from that is that the nature of logic is not, you can't establish Siddhanta, ultimate truth, by logic. All you can understand by logic is the relative nature of one point to another, but it doesn't necessarily establish the truth. Therefore, Mahabharata says, Tarko Pratishta. Tarko Pratishta. Arguments are not, they don't settle things. There's just logical arguments. Now you might say, but Prabhupada said for us to preach logically, and he did, and we should. Because people don't have faith in Shastra. So if they don't have faith in Shastra, then you have to give logical arguments, because that's what will make sense to them, and that's what they have faith in. Well, also they have faith in science. If you can present things in a scientific way, or according to history, or research, statistics, and so forth, because they don't have faith in Shastra. So we speak logically, but logic may be true, but not necessarily true because it's logical. Generally, logical things are true, but not necessarily. And because something is transcendental, it's not necessarily going to be logical materially. And that's why sometimes we have trouble understanding certain things because they're not logical materially, because they're not material. They're describing a transcendental existence, which is not always going to be logical, obviously, because it's transcendental. It works under a different set of laws. So anyway, he would do that, and he was reputed as a very great scholar. And then one scholar came to Navadvip, and this scholar, his idea was he wanted to be the greatest scholar, the most renowned scholar. And the way they did that is they would challenge other scholars to debates. And when they defeated them, then the defeated scholar would have to sign a paper that I've been defeated by so-and-so. It's kind of like, an unofficial World Cup or something. You just go around and defeat all the greatest scholars. Or kind of more like boxing, I guess, because it's one-on-one. So there was this personality called Keshav Kashmiri. And I guess he was the world heavyweight logician, so to speak. And so he met Lord Caitanya, and Lord Caitanya took a very humble position. And, you're a great scholar, I'm nothing, what do I know? I'm just a young boy, like that. He said, so Mahaprabhu said, recite a verse on the Ganges, and I think he composed like 100 verses on the spot, some phenomenal, and Mahaprabhu just listened. So Keshav Kashmiri said, so, what are you thinking of my verses? And are they very nice? Mahaprabhu said, they're very nice, but there's X number of ornaments and X number of faults. And, you could imagine Keshava Kashmiri when he heard the word fault. Like, this little boy is telling me there's a fault in my verses. Which, just the fact that he could compose so many verses on the spot is quite amazing. You could imagine he was quite a logician, quite a scholar, quite a poet. And the Lord Chaitanya said, these are the ornaments, but these are the faults. And according to Sanskrit grammar, he pointed out the faults. In Keshav Kashmiri, how would we describe it? He thinks he's the greatest scholar, and a 12-year-old boy is just showing him what's wrong with his verses. Oh, what do we say? He walked away with his tail between his legs. Very, just overwhelmingly embarrassed. And yeah, I know how he felt. He felt like Donald Trump after he lost the election, something like that. Unbelievable. How could I lose this election? This is like Joe Biden. I mean, this guy is a loser. How could I? It's impossible that I lost the election. Something like that. But unlike Donald Trump, who kept saying, actually, we didn't lose the election, it was a fraud, Keshav Kashmiri, he realized he was defeated. He didn't think he wasn't. Then he had a dream, and Saraswati came and said, this is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why you're defeated. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That was the only person who could defeat me. So he went back and surrendered. So that was, but that was the Leela that Mahaprabhu was having at that time, the Leela of being a magician. And what's so interesting about it is you could say, because he's Krishna, he's the greatest logician that ever walked the planet. And then when he finally becomes a disciple of Ishwara Puri says, you can't really understand Vedanta. He can't understand Vedanta? He's the greatest logician that walked the planet. He defeated Keshav Kashmiri, and he can't understand Vedanta. Yeah, no, you can't understand. Just chant Hare Krishna. So, as I think we discussed last week, or no, it must have been Wednesday, when Mahaprabhu met Prakashananda Saraswati, who was the head senior leader of the Mayavadis, or at least a large group of Mayavadis, one sect of Mayavadis. he told that story to Prakashananda. Prakashananda saying, so tell us Vedanta. What is your realization of Vedanta? Like, I can't understand Vedanta. I'm not that smart. My guru said, you're actually a fool. You can't understand Vedanta. Just chant Hare Krishna. So even though Mahaprabhu is playing the part of logician, there's obviously lessons there. It's not like you're going to understand Krishna because you're smart, because you're intelligent. And then Shankaracharya, as you know, Shankaracharya was what came on the order of Lord Chaitanya. He was actually Lord Shiva. To pull people out of Buddhism back into the Vedic way by maintaining basic Buddhist philosophy or modifying Buddhist philosophy in a way that could be seen to align with the Vedas, at least in a certain way, and then bring people back under the Vedic paradigm and set the way for Ramanujacharya and other acharyas to come and establish proper Siddhanta. So, because he's Lord Shiva, he's actually a devotee, but his disciples thought he's, the number one impersonalist. But he had said things and written things to indicate he wasn't. It was obviously hard for him to hold back his devotion and just speak Mayavad philosophy. That was must have been really difficult for him, but that was his service, so he did it. But you may know the song, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Mudhamate. This song he sang on his deathbed, and Mudha means fool. And so he was saying, Bhaja Govinda, worship Govinda, you fools. And all his disciples are around. He said, you fools, just worship Govinda, And then he said, you're juggling Sanskrit suffixes and prefixes and juggling them back and forth and trying to understand the meaning and speculating. He said, it's not going to save you. This is not going to help. They didn't understand. They thought he had dementia or something, because to them, it was entirely different from everything he ever said. Although, if you study some of the things he wrote, he did say these things. So, the Mayavadi approach was to study Vedanta Sutra. You have to be a Sanskrit scholar to speculate and this and that. So, this way Mahaprabhu taught us that, or his guru taught through him, that even though I'm the greatest scholar, I can't even understand Vedanta, because scholarship will not help you understand Krishna. Only devotion will. So his guru said, well, just chant Hare Krishna. That way you'll understand and you'll get the essence, which is prema. Prema pamartho mahan. It's the ultimate goal. It's the ultimate essence of the Vedas. So Mahaprabhu chanted and exhibited ecstatic symptoms. All the devotees did through chanting. The Mayavadis do not exhibit ecstasy through studying Vedanta. They don't exhibit awakening of their rasa, of their relation with Krishna through Vedanta. So that's how Mahaprabhu grew up, in many pastimes like this, scholarship pastimes. And so his father died, and the tradition was you would go to Gaya and do the offering to the ancestors and so forth. That was the tradition, so he went. And he met Ishvara Puri. And when he came back, life was different. He was now a bhakta, and all the devotees were so happy that he had come back, and now he's a bhakta. Because that's what they wanted. Because like I said, they said he's got so many good qualities. He would make the best devotee. You ever meet somebody like that? They're so sweet, they're so kind, they're so pious, they have such a service attitude, they're so generous, they're so intelligent. And you think, if this person becomes a devotee, they'll be such a wonderful devotee. They have so many good qualities. So you could imagine what the devotees were thinking. Mahaprabhu, he had every good quality. to the extreme. So he comes back and he's a devotee, and everyone is like going crazy. And he's coming back with the Maha Mantra. He said, this is it. This is the religion. We have to propagate the Maha Mantra. So he begins going out in Harinam, propagating it. And as we know, having these private kirtans at Srivas Sangha, which we go to occasionally when we take devotees. We went on one morning walk when we were doing the retreat, I think that morning, or just in general, we went there. We went to Srivas Sangha, we had kirtan. So he was doing these private kirtans only for his intimate associates. He had revealed his Mahaprakash. He had revealed himself, although he doesn't normally do that, but he had revealed himself. And Mother Sachi had a dream that Gaur Nitai were now pulling Krishna Balaram off the altar, and there was like a fight going on. Balaram is saying, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're pulling my Krishna off the altar. And Nityananda is saying, your time is over. It's our time. Get off. Get down. They had a fight, and Gaur Nitai won. Oh my God. That would have been nice to see that, huh? We'd be rolling on the floor, crying and screaming, I think, if we saw that. Anyway, we can see it by hearing about it. So they had this fight and this argument, and, it's like, your age is over, it's our time, get down. Finally, Krishna and Balaram were defeated. And so he manifested, but only briefly. But he played the role of a devotee. He didn't want people to think of him as God. He wanted to exhibit the highest devotion and give the highest devotion. So he began the sankirtan movement and doing kirtan everywhere. And then, as we know, the Qazi tried to stop him. And he had what Prabhupada called the first, what did he call that? Non-cooperation, I think he called it. The first non-cooperation demonstration in the history of the universe. Mahaprabhu all the devotees were so mad with the Qazi. The Qazi tried to stop kirtan, broke the mridangas. It's a famous play in ISKCON, You get an old mridanga, kind of patch it up so it looks good, and then you break it. It's already broken. Or you make some kind of mridanga that you could break. So the devotees were really angry. And so Mahaprabhu said, okay, we're marching to the Qazi. And the devotees were ready to kill the Qazi. They were so angry. Mahaprabhu had it like, okay, calm down. So let me go in, I'll deal with it. And so, of course, Mahaprabhu could convert anyone. Anyway, he had a discussion with him, and he showed the Qazi that, he's bogus. And what we're doing is correct. And if you're actually a Muslim, you should support us. And Qazi agreed, and Qazi made a statement that Sankirtan can never be stopped. It passed a law or something to this day. Because Mayapur is very, very much inhabited by Muslims, lots and lots of Muslims. And Sankirtan is not stopped. It's not bothered by them. So that was a big event in the world of Sankirtan. And it was just, the ecstasy was flowing, and the devotees were going crazy. And then the bomb drops. He takes sannyas. So let's see where we are, because Prabhupada's talking about the first 24 years. Then he goes right to after taking sannyas. Mahaprabhu's sannyas was like, as it's described, it was precipitated by the fact that he wasn't being respected, he wasn't being understood. And he was absorbed in thinking of the gopis, and he was saying gopi, 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 because he's in that mood of a gopi, and he was meditating on the gopis, and feeling that gopi bhav. Some student or someone came to him and said, "Hey, Why are you chanting gopis? You should chant Hare Krishna. Yeah, you ever have a devotee do something like that to you? You're sweeping the floor and you're chanting Om Namo Bhagavate. Hey, why chant Om Namo Bhagavate? You should be chanting Hare Krishna. You know the Shastra, something like ridiculous. And you're like, get me out of here. So Mahaprabhu thought, I've come to give Krishna consciousness, and these people are disrespecting me. They're just taking me as one of like the village people that they know. And how am I going to spread my mission? So he said, I have to take sannyas because sannyas is the most respected order of life. And unless people respect me, how are they going to hear me? And if they don't hear me, my mission, how can I do my mission? So he made a decision that he was going to take sannyas. He only told a few. I can't remember who he told. Maybe Nityananda Prabhu. Didn't tell his mother, didn't tell his wife. Although his mother knew. She figured it out. Mothers know what's on their sons' minds. She figured it out. And she woke up when he was about to leave because he left in the middle of the night. He didn't want to disturb his wife. Many of his friends, as I remember the story, gathered the evening before, but I don't remember him telling them. I haven't read that story for about 5 years, so it's not fresh in my mind, but as I remember, he didn't tell anybody what he was doing. Anyways, you can imagine his wife and mother are devastated. Everyone is devastated. He meets Keshav Bharati. He asks if he could give him sannyas. He agrees. Then he has to shave his head, and he had very beautiful hair. He was very beautiful. So that was, Niyamai Pandit was quite famous at this point. So I had to get a barber, and the barber's like, I can't do this. Finally, he agrees, and the barber, as I was told, at least one explanation of the story, after the barber cut his hair, he said, I'll never cut hair again. This was like too traumatic. He had post-traumatic stress disorder for barbers. It's like, I can't cut hair again. This was too traumatic. And so everybody was like, oh no, he cut his hair. This is horrible. Anyway, when he left, he still had students. But now I don't know if he still had students at that time. When he was initiated, I forgot to mention, he came back, and then he would teach his students grammar, Sanskrit grammar, and he would say, everything means Krishna. Everything in the Vedas means Krishna. That's all it means. Everything was Krishna, which is true. In the strictest sense, everything is meant. It does meant to bring you to Krishna Bhakti. Anyway, so this Keshav Bharati is a Mayavadi. And so how can he take sannyas from a Mayavadi? Well, that was the only thing in town at that point. That was the only kind of sannyas going. You know the story that Nityananda was not so happy about the sannyas he took, so he broke his stick into 3. Now he was a Tridandi instead of Ekadandi, because the Mayavadis are Ekadandis. But Tridandi means you body, mind, and soul given to Krishna. So when Mahaprabhu was bathing and he put his danda down, or was away from his danda, Nityananda broke it into 3 pieces. But even the Ramanuja Sampradaya, their sannyas, they had 1 danda. But Bhaktisiddhanta introduced 3 dandas. So he was now Tridandi sannyas. So how did I get to that? Sannyas. How did I get to Lord Nityananda? Anyway, so comes back, the students. So Keshav Bharati is a Mayavadi. So like, if you're going to get a degree for in order that you want the respect of people, and you're going to do a PhD, might as well do it at Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard or Yale or somewhere. respectable, right? Because if that's the purpose, you want respect. You want acceptance. So that was, what he had to do. But knew the mantra. He already knew the mantra that Kesha Bharati was going to give. So before he gave him the mantra, he said, "Are you going to give me this mantra?" And Kesha Bharati said, "Yes." And so the way that's explained is that when Mahaprabhu recited the mantra in the ear of Kesha Bharati became a devotee. So actually Mahaprabhu first initiated Kesha Bharati. You could say unofficially, and now Kesha Bharati is a devotee, now he gives him sannyas. So he was given sannyas by a devotee. But anyway, according to the Mayavadis, he was initiated by Kesha Bharati as a Mayavadi sannyasi. So they were like wondering, why is this sannyasi dancing and chanting and all of that? It doesn't make sense. He's like us. He's, in the same line. So that's his sannyas. It's a little longer story. I can't remember the details, but I think the highlight of it is that he initiated Kesha Bharati. So I'll just go back. See your comments. Filling in the details that I am not remembering. So Marco says, Lord Chaitanya pointed out an error in the grammatical logic of Keshav Kashmiri, who said in praise, Ganges, here's the error. Sati's husband, Shiva's wife. Sati, who is Parvati, is actually Shiva's wife. So who else could be the husband if not Shiva himself? Sati's husband, Shiva's wife, is kind of redundant, right? What amazed me most was Lord Chaitanya's compassion, defeating the expert scholar, avoiding humiliating him. Yeah, that's true. So it's not to break the heart. Because when they ended the discussion, Mahaprabhu didn't go, ha, 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 gotcha on that one. He just said, let's meet tomorrow. Just let's go, let's finish for today. And, it's like you're, boxing someone and you knock them out and they get up to fight again. You go, well, let's just end here for today. It's been a long day. And because you're just going to knock them out again, what's the point? And, that was a good fight, wasn't it, everyone? Yeah, okay, well, let's talk tomorrow. We'll fight tomorrow. Something like that, yeah. That's what happened. So we will continue reading. After taking sannyas, the Lord made his headquarters in Jagannath Puri, due to the request of his mother, Srimati Sachi Devi. And the reason that she requested that is he wasn't going to stay in Navadvip anymore because he had to be away from his wife and mother, especially his wife. So his mother said, well, can you stay in Puri? Because the devotees are always going from Bengal to Puri for Rath Yatra. And that way, when they come back, they can tell me about you. So I will get news of that. And so he agreed. Of course, he traveled. He did some traveling before he settled in Puri. The Lord remained for 24 years at Puri. For 6 years of this time, he traveled continuously all over India, especially throughout South India, preaching the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta also traveled in South India. And he installed the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya in the places that Lord Chaitanya visited. That was to, the South Indians were not rooted in Chaitanya, the tradition of Lord Chaitanya. So Bhaktisiddhanta did that to emphasize the bhakti tradition of Lord Chaitanya in those places. Lord Chaitanya not only preached the Srimad Bhagavatam, but propagated the teachings of Bhagavad-gita as well in the most practical way. In the Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna is depicted as the absolute personality of Godhead. And his last teachings in that great book of transcendental knowledge instruct that one should give up all other modes of religious activities and accept him, Lord Sri Krishna, as the only worshipable Lord. The Lord then assured that all his devotees would be protected from all sorts of sinful acts, and that for them there would be no cause of anxiety. Unfortunately, despite Lord Krishna's direct order and the teachings of Bhagavad-gita, less intelligent people misunderstand him to be nothing but a great historical personality. And thus, they cannot accept him as the original personality of Godhead. Such men with a poor fund of knowledge are misled by many non-devotees. Thus, the teachings of Bhagavad-gita were misinterpreted even by great scholars. After the disappearance of Lord Sri Krishna, there were hundreds of commentaries on Bhagavad-gita by many erudite scholars, and almost every one of them was motivated by self-interest. One time Prabhupada said, you think Krishna had a problem, like, explaining what he wanted to explain? Like, you have to, like, add your 2 cents to it? Like, you have to add something different? No, actually, he didn't really mean that. And interesting, right? Like, Krishna doesn't really know what he's talking about, and you do. You know better. So Prabhupada here is going and it's giving some background about, what was the thought process. I think that's where he's going. Let's see, I'll read the thought process of Krishna in at least the external thought process and how it relates to us in Krishna coming to this world as Mahaprabhu. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the self-same Lord Krishna. This time, however, he appeared as a great devotee of the Lord in order to preach to the people in general, as well as to religionists and philosophers, about the transcendental position of Sri Krishna, the primeval Lord and the cause of all causes. The essence of his preaching is that Lord Sri Krishna, who appeared at Brajabhumi, Vrindavan, as the son of the king of Braja, Nanda Maharaj, is the supreme personality of Godhead, and therefore worshipable by all. Vrindavan Dham is none different from the Lord, because the name, fame, form, and place where the Lord manifests himself are all identical with the Lord as absolute knowledge. Therefore, Vrindavan Dham is as worshipable as the Lord. The highest form of transcendental worship of the Lord was exhibited by the damsels of Brajabhumi in the form of pure affection for the Lord. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recommends this process as the most excellent mode of worship. He accepts the Srimad Bhagavatam Purana as the spotless literature for understanding the Lord, and he preaches the ultimate goal of life for all human beings to attain to the stage of prema, or love of God. So we had discussed this in the last class. It's really interesting that Krishna comes and so few people understand him and so few people accept him. That's mind-boggling in a sense. And I think it underscores how conditioned we are, that even God comes personally and you're like, yeah, whatever. I'm fine. I don't really need your Bhagavad Gita. I'm fine. I'm okay. Hare Krishna. Sometimes we lament that, we're very conditioned and very reluctant to surrender. I think we can see how deeply ingrained that is, that even Krishna couldn't get them to surrender. So, it's amazing that Prabhupada could, isn't it? So then Mahaprabhu is thinking, okay, we're trying to get people to give up their material lives and become devotees. And I spoke Bhagavad Gita, but I don't know. It's not working. We need another strategy. Sometimes it's interesting, because you could say, well, why should I speak Bhagavad Gita? It didn't work. Okay, I have something to tell you about that. Because you could think like that, right? Well, Mahaprabhu comes back because Bhagavad-gita didn't work. And now you're telling me to speak Bhagavad-gita, but it didn't work. That's how Nityananda Prabhu thought. Because Nityananda Prabhu did not say, surrender to Krishna. He did not say, read Bhagavad-gita. He said, surrender to Gaura. Listen to Gaura's teachings. Hear Gaura's kirtan. Worship Gaura. He only spoke about Lord Chaitanya. That was the mood that Lord Krishna came. He tried. Very few people surrendered. Now, we direct them to Gaur. Gauranga. That's their hope. That's their only hope. Because he's unlimitedly merciful. So their only hope is Gaur. So wherever he went, he would always talk about Lord Chaitanya. Chant the name of Lord Chaitanya. Hear of Lord Chaitanya. Worship Lord Chaitanya. Yeah, so it's true, that it was hard for people. Somehow, by some blessing, we all read Bhagavad Gita and said, yes, this is the book. And then, as I mentioned before, Prabhupada had said, when Krishna says surrender, and Lord Chaitanya says chant Hare Krishna, it's the same thing. That becomes how we surrender in Kali Yuga. Surrender, Prabhu. Surrender to what? Well, surrender in Kali Yuga is kirtan and chanting your rounds. That's the main aspect of surrender. Yuga Dharma is chanting the holy name. That's surrender. So Sarva Dharmam Parittaja and Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Eva Kevalam. It's the same thing. That's what Prabhupada said. So that's interesting. So Nityananda Prabhu, he did not have a lot of faith. He did not have a lot of faith in people surrendering to Krishna, but he had complete faith in people surrendering to Lord Chaitanya. So that's what he preached. Interesting, right? Okay, let me see if there's any comments or questions. Okay. Many devotees of Lord Chaitanya, like Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, Sri Lochan Das Thakur, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Sri Kavi Karnapura, Sri Prabodhananda Saraswati, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, and in the latter age, within 200 years, Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti, Sri Baladev Vidya Bhushana, Sri Shamananda Goswami, Sri Narottam Das Thakur, Sri Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and at last Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, our spiritual master, and many other great and renowned scholars and devotees of the Lord have prepared voluminous books and literatures on the life and precepts of the Lord. Such literatures are all based on the Shastras, like the Vedas, Puranas, Upanishads, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and other histories, and authentic literatures approved by the recognized acharyas. Acharyo, if you're Bengali. Acharyo. You know how the Bengalis sing, Ramo, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo. One devotee was chanting, Hare Ramo. Prabhupada was so upset with him. Who is this Ramo? So, what's that accent, Prabhu? You could get yourself in trouble. You could go to Ramo Loka if you're not careful. So Prabhupada's saying here that all these devotees, or many of these devotees, wrote books on the life of Mahaprabhu. They are unique in composition and unrivaled in presentation, and they are full of transcendental knowledge. Unfortunately, the people of the world are still ignorant of them. But when these literatures, which are mostly in Sanskrit and Bengali, come to light the world, and when they are presented before thinking people, then India's glory and the message of love will overflow this morbid world, which is vainly searching after peace and prosperity by various illusory methods not approved by the acharyas in the chain of disciplic succession. So we have, it's the same point I was making earlier, that these literatures need to come to light. People need to understand God actually was walking on the planet. An event like that going unnoticed, it's like crazy. My wife was saying yesterday, we had a tornado watch or a tornado warning. I think it was a warning, like a tornado was coming to Alachua, and it was raining like buckets. And she was driving home in the rain, and she was listening to the radio and said, tornado, warning, it's coming to Alachua. And she said that they had all the weather, what do you call meteorologists, the weather people. They had like a panel of 3 or 4. And she said it sounded like a sports event. Well, it could come here at this time, and if it comes at this time, you got to be inside your house, and you got to, block the windows, and, stay, and she said it was like they were recounting a sporting event. It was such a big thing. She couldn't believe it. They were making such a big thing about it. So they're making a big thing about this possible tornado, which at least it didn't hit us. I don't know if it went anywhere else. They're making a big thing about this possible tornado. And as you know, so many big things on the internet now, social media. And nobody even knows that God was walking on the planet. That's weird, don't you think? That is really weird. So we've come across some really weird things going on in the material world, like nobody knows that God is walking on the planet, or if they do, they don't believe it, or they don't care. And then when Krishna's walking on the planet 5,000 years ago, it's like, whatever, I'm busy today. It's crazy. And so if you ever feel bad that your conditioned soul with so much dirt in your heart is just look at what's going on in this world. You are way better off than most people. Isn't that weird, don't you think? Material world is such an unfortunate place to be, but such a fortunate place if you become a good devotee. But otherwise, it's like, who is interested in God? I wonder how many people sitting in the church are actually interested in God. I mean, in surrendering in pure devotion. It's a weird place. If I were you, I would get out of here. That's all I can say. I wouldn't hang out here. If I were you, I'd get out of here as soon as possible. Just don't kill yourself, because you're not going to get out of here if you do that. Okay, we'll read a little more. The readers of this small description of the life and precepts of Lord Chaitanya will profit much to go through books of Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. You probably think it sounds funny, the way I'm pronouncing everything. It does sound funny because I'm pronouncing it properly. If I say Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, then you go, that's the way you're supposed to say it. And I go, no, you're not. It's Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's how you're supposed to say it. But that's how I said it. And you probably thought, that sounds weird. But that's how you're supposed to say it. The early life of the Lord is most fascinatingly expressed by the author of Chaitanya Bhagavat. And as far as the teachings are concerned, they are more vividly explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Chaitanya Charitamrita is that's the book. That's it. Don't get much better than that, Prabhu. That's the book. Chaitanya Charitamrita is like the epitome of the highest understanding of rasa, the mood of Radharani. Can't climb higher than Mount Everest. That's it. So Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Chaitanya Charitamrita, that expounds, Chaitanya Bhagavat has the Leela, but Chaitanya Charitamrita expounds the philosophy, has the Leela but expounds the philosophy. Different Leelas, not the same. Krishnadas Kaviraj thought, why I don't need to describe the same Leelas. And if I do, I'll just describe any Leela that is described in Chaitanya Bhagavat. If I decide to describe it in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it'll just be brief, because you can read about it in Chaitanya Bhagavat. The early life of the Lord is most fascinatingly expressed by the author of Chaitanya Bhagavat. And as far as the teachings are concerned, they are more vividly explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Got that? Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now they are available to the English-speaking public in our teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So this introduction seems to have been written. I don't know if you'll find this introduction or this was added to it, because this could not have been written in the original Bhagavatam, because we didn't have teachings of Lord Chaitanya until maybe 1968 or so, or early 69. The Lord's early life was recorded by one of his chief devotees and contemporaries, namely Srila Murari Gupta, a medical practitioner of that time. And the latter part of the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was recorded by his private secretary, Sri Damodar Goswami, or Srila Sarup Damodar. It's the same person, who was practically a constant companion of the Lord at Puri. These two devotees recorded practically all the incidents of the Lord's activities, and later on all the books dealing with the Lord, which are above mentioned, were composed on the basis of the Kadachas, notebooks, of Srila Damodar Goswami Murari Gupta. So, you could imagine, like Hari Sari made a diary. He was smart enough to make a diary. So, Murari Gupta and Srup Damodar, fortunately, made diaries. Not diaries, well, noted these pastimes for us. We are eternally indebted to them. You may remember we went to Murari Gupta's home in Mayapur. Some of you were there. We'll read just a little more. So the Lord advented himself on the Falguna Purnima evening of 1407 Shakabda. And it was by the will of the Lord that there was a lunar eclipse. So now we're going to go back. I guess we're going backwards now. That first part was just a summary, and maybe we're going to read what I had discussed. Anyway, no problem. It's always sweet. And it was by the will of the Lord that there was a lunar eclipse on that evening. During the hours of eclipse, it was the custom of the Hindu public to take bath in the Ganges or any other sacred river and chant the Vedic mantras for purification. When Lord Chaitanya was born during the lunar eclipse, all India was roaring with the holy sound of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. These 16 names of the Lord are mentioned in many Puranas and Upanishads. And they are described as the Taraka Brahma Nam of this age, the spiritual name that will deliver you. It is recommended in the Shastras that offenseless chanting of these holy names of the Lord can deliver a fallen soul from material bondage. There are innumerable names of the Lord in both India and outside. And all of them are equally good because all of them indicate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because these 16 are especially recommended for this age, people should take advantage of them and follow the path of the great acharyas who attain success by practicing the rules of the Shastras, revealed scriptures. So sometimes people say, Prabhupada said to chant the name of a devotee is more powerful than chanting the name of Krishna. And Prabhupada said in chanting the name of the Panchatattva, they don't take offense. So there's no such thing as offensive chanting of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. There's no offense. You just chant it anyway. You could be in Maya, whatever. You chant Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. You chant it. There's no offense. You can't make offense. And a little side note for all of you Gadadhara fans. It's not Gadadhara. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara. It's not Gadadhara. I'm sorry to inform you. It's Gadadhara. Shri Advaita Gadadhara. So someone, by reading this, would think, okay, well, let's just chant Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Or, how about this? You get your rounds, I think you could maybe get your rounds done faster. No? I don't know. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara. It's only 22 syllables. You save yourself 10 syllables. You could finish your rounds faster also. There's so many benefits. So the question was asked to Prabhupada, if this is true, why are we chanting Hare Krishna? And Prabhupada gave a simple answer, because Mahaprabhu said to chant Hare Krishna. Well, that solved that problem, right? Mahaprabhu came to give the holy name. This is what he wanted us to do. So Prabhupada's saying the same thing here. There are innumerable names of the Lord, both in India and outside, and all of them are equally good, because all of them indicate the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because these 16 are especially recommended for this age, people should take advantage. So that's why it's recommended. But it's nice here that Prabhupada's, he's saying it's recommended, but you can, Prabhupada many times said, whatever name of God you want to chant, you can chant it. It's okay. So, it's now 9:30 in Alachua. All is well. And we're going to end class. Yeah. We'll see some of you later on Japa. And Japa begins in an hour and a half. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Jai Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.